Chapter 5 Imperfect Spell. Rockland, Indiana, May 1998. Elian Schaefer sits in his office. The room is barren save for a few certificates indicating international accomplishments. 7 years prior, he participated in the World Martial Arts Championships, then hosted by Spain. He walked away with a third-place trophy. The year after, he participated in the next tournament held in Israel. This time he made it to the second round but did not place. With black belts in 3 different styles of martial arts, Kapat, Sistema, and Baritsu, Elian is not a man to be trifled with in a fight. His skills, however, do not transfer over to his personal life. 2 failed marriages and 3 children in their teens that will not speak to him. All he has to trust in are the 4 walls of his dojo and his own training. During his travels abroad, Elian used his time training to mask his true intentions, to locate an ancient book known only to a select few, and even among them in whispers. Beneath the village of Tel Abasha was a necropolis. Most of the valuable artifacts had long been plundered, but the object that Elian sought was still to be found, in the temple of the serpent god Nyarlathotep. Elian discovered the Book of the Black Earth. This book was penned by the celestial beings known as the Yazata to document the history of the earth and map its progress and fallings. The Book of the Black Earth was never intended for human eyes. The Yazata wrote it to preserve history so that in the far future, those in charge may use past events as a guide. 3 times in human history has the book been possessed by humans, the last being in the ancient city of Mes Shaluas. Elian opens his desk drawer and stares at the ancient book written by the angels, and cannot avert his gaze. A powerful force draws him to the book and invigorates him. Through translating the book, he has learned not only of lost civilizations unheard of by modern man, but also of terrible powers that once roamed the world freely. The fallen angels who became the accursed Devilne, and the beings from the world outside of ours called the Sicarii. It is information on the Sicarii, called demons by the humans of the time, that initiated Elian's drive to find the book. His family long happened to come in possession of an ancient amulet, and no one could tell him where it came. It was sealed with magic, and a powerful force could be felt emanating from within. At times, Elian could feel this force radiating outwards, speaking to him. He knew that he must discover where the amulet came from, and exactly what it contained. "You will soon be free, Lord Yamura," Elian whispers, holding up the amulet from his drawer and placing it back atop the book. His mind drifts to 6 years earlier, when his current path was forever solidified, and he realized there was no turning back. "I have the newest set of translated pages here," Professor Corey replies, placing his hand on a stack of crudely arranged papers. "Please do not delay. I traveled halfway across the world to find that text. I must know all it contains," Elian replies, his voice possessing an impossible-to-miss anxiety. His body trembles. He clutches his hands in tight fists, and tension causes his already large form to seem even more hulking. "I must know how this book knows of my family's heirloom, and how it's connected to Yamura." Elian stares at the translated pages before him in disbelief. This book truly is a first-hand penning from a celestial being. Professor Corey hands Elian a loose page tucked inside the book a few chapters later. The page is dark brown with age and hardly readable. The paper is made of a species of tree that none of the university staff have been able to identify. It was found inside the book, but the handwriting is different from the rest of the text. It appears this page is from a separate book with a separate author, Professor Corey explains. "So what is it?" Professor Corey smiles, knowing what he is about to say is going to sound more extreme than anything yet. This is quite a powerful fact, considering the outrageousness of finding a book whose author claims to be a celestial being called the Yazata, which we call an angel. "Which page?" Elian asks, his curiosity unable to handle any more surprises. "What does it say?" He shakes with anticipation. A thick sweat of cold perspiration covers his face. "It's a spell to locate vessel-ready humans." "What's a vessel-ready human?" According to the main book, It's a term for specially selected humans who are able to become possessed by otherworldly spirits. After their fall, the Devilnae were prevented from physically existing in our world any longer. Vessel-ready humans are able to be used as hosts for the Devilnae spirits to exist here. I suppose they can be used for other spirits as well, such as these Sakari. Elian feels as though all of the air rapidly is ejected from his lungs. You have to be joking, Elian whispers. Professor Corey begins to chuckle, folding up the translation and tucking it away. You don't honestly believe this stuff, do you? It's pure mythology. Granted, it's from a mythological source that we have no previous knowledge of, but it's still nothing more than a grandiose storytelling in the fashion of the Bible or the Hindu Vedas. I thought you were genuinely interested in this from a scholarly aspect. You aren't a believer of this nonsensical superstition, are you? No, I just didn't think we'd find that much is all. A voice whispers into the back of Elian's thoughts. The voice is not as invasive as before, and Elian does not feel as though it is out of place. He cannot share this information. Take back the book and all of his notes and translations. Use the Yazatan language key to finish them yourself, and kill him. Elian trembles. His skin becomes cold and dry. The color flushes noticeably from his face. What's wrong? You look ill, Professor Corey asks, looking up briefly from his papers to see the sudden change in his guest's appearance. Nothing, I'm fine, Elian replies hoarsely, clearing his throat several times. Maybe you should come back in the morning? I admire your thirst for knowledge, but us fossils must rest a few hours each night to function. You seem worn out, Professor Corey politely jokes as he gathers up his papers for the night. I'm afraid I cannot, Elian says. His voice is cold and distant. Large black rings frame his eyes. Professor Corey feels deep fear within him and starts to reach for his telephone. With a single fast blow, Elian backhands him across the face and knocks him to the floor. Professor Corey feels warmth flowing down his face. He cannot tell if his nose is broken or just busted open. His muscles and joints are locked up. Fear and shock prevent his body from moving. Shakily, he finally manages to raise a hand to try and protect his face as Elian leans down towards him. Elian swats the man's hand aside and covers his nose and mouth with his own hand. Professor Corey claws at the muscular arm to no avail as he slowly is suffocated. He kicks and struggles, knocking over his chair and a table containing many papers and books. Elian's eyes glance back towards the hallway as the sounds of the professor's struggling echo loudly. It is not long before the professor goes limp beneath Elian's grasp, having been suffocated to death. Elian moves his hand away. The professor's lifeless eyes remain open and bulging. He staggers back in horrible realization. He has just taken another man's life. Take the notes and the book. Burn the building down, the voice urges Elian. Why can't you just tell me what the book says? Tell me what it is you need me to know. Elian begs the voice. Burn the building down, the voice replies. Elian backs up against a wall and slides down nearly in tears. His chest heaves as he fights off hyperventilation. Panicking, he glances at his arm to see deep claw marks that are still oozing blood. During their brief struggle, Professor Corey scratched at his arm to try and get free. Elian realizes in horror that his DNA is now beneath the professor's fingernails. He rushes over to the desk, shoving handfuls of papers into his bag and gently placing the ancient tome on top of them. He checks all of Professor Corey's drawers and makes sure that he leaves nothing behind that will allow someone else to continue the translations of the book without him. With everything secured, he begins shoving scraps of paper inside of an electrical outlet beside the professor's chair, and then plugs all of the electronics he can find into the same outlet using 2 power bars. Elian kneels beside the tangled nightmare of cords and concentrates. It has been many years since he has attempted anything resembling the spells of his youth. Sweat runs down his face and arms as he tries and fails many times to call forth the needed energy to successfully complete his spell. Finally, he visualizes the intricate pattern of symbols in his mind, arranging them into the correct pattern until they lock into place and a single word escapes his lips. Agnestra. A tiny spark of fire materializes on the floor beside the cords, smoldering. Within only another few minutes, flames have begun to spread throughout the office and smoke fills the hallway. Elian briskly leaves the building, careful to avoid any of the university's security cameras that are contained outside of the building. The fire smolders for 45 minutes before a late working professor in the geology department a few blocks away spots the smoke and alerts the fire department. By the time the trucks arrive, Professor Corey's office is an inferno, and much of the surrounding hall and classrooms are devastated. Unable to find an accelerant during the investigation, and finding the mess of cords plugged into a single outlet, it's declared that it was an electrical fire caused due to carelessness. The university mourns the loss of one of its great minds. Elian spends months poring over his desk, laboriously trying to use Professor Corey's translation notes to decipher more pages from the Book of the Black Earth. He begins to occasionally miss teaching classes at his dojo, and his advanced students are forced to fill in for him in his absence. He continues contact with Professor Aidan Cohan of the University of Istanbul, but does not mention any translations of the Book of the Black Earth, which is thought to be destroyed in the fire that killed Professor Corey. Occasionally, Professor Cohan includes new photos from the dig sites near Göbekli Tepe and Telebasha, but neither yields anything as remarkable as the discoveries made in the temple of Nyarlathotep nearly a year prior. 2. E. Schaefer, 68 at AOL.com, from A. Cohan at UI.il. Professor Elazar is suing the University of Chicago for the destruction of the book. I remain friends with a few of his graduate students, and they say he's furious on a daily basis, unable to perform many of his duties. He seeks retribution. 2. A. Cohan at UI.il, from E. Schaefer, 68 at AOL.com. Fires destroy precious pieces of history. It is an unfortunate inevitability. How much could we ever guess was lost to us when the library at Alexandria burned? Elian replies back. Professor Cohan is astounded at how well Elian is coping with the loss. He knows the search for Mesh-Shaluas and the book were his driving force in pursuing an interest in archaeology. 2. E. Schaefer, 68 at AOL.com, from A. Cohan at UI.il. Professor Elazar has, however, initiated a computer program in cooperation with the technology department to begin a translation of the scans of the book in his possession. Currently, his scans are all that remains of that mysterious find. Hopefully, we can learn more soon. Elian grinds his teeth together in fury after reading the newest message. Damn it! Elazar, or more likely one of his grad students, must have recognized the similarities to Yazatan and contacted Professor Corey for his translation key of the language. There's no telling what else they collaborated on. Elazar could already have more pages translated than I do. As if on cue to his anger, the disembodied voice comes to him. Do not despair. I am in the hearts of others. The knowledge of the Book of the Black Earth will not become public. Its translation will remain only in the hands of those who can hear my voice. I will walk with you and guide you through the storm, saying Sheh Shalah. Lior Nadav is busy in the university archives, trying to organize all texts relating to the time periods of any of the places or cities referenced in the Book of the Black Earth. Professor Elazar has ordered all pertinent material to be organized and brought to him, as he has become paranoid of anyone else touching the scanned pages of the book. So far in her searches, the cities mentioned do not exist anywhere outside of this one text, for two small references to the city of Mesh-Shaluas and an 11th dynasty Egyptian priest's tomb. A French archaeologist named Enzo Gabriel discovered the priest's tomb in 1935. He documented his discovery in a series of 3 journals. Reprints of those journals are sitting on the table near the exit of the archives, waiting to be brought upstairs to Professor Elazar. In his second journal, Enzo recounts the murals painted on the walls and ceilings of the tomb. One of the walls he mentions a serpent god called Nyarlathotep, devouring several cities he was displeased with. These cities were called Bakhtur and Mesh-Shaluas. Lior is convinced that Nyarlathotep is the same serpent deity called Nyarlathotep of the temple they found at the dig site in Telebasha. Likely, the lengthy time between the 11th dynasty and the time of Mesh-Shaluas led to name discrepancies. We get the names wrong of people who lived down the road 20 years ago. It's not unthinkable that The names of gods are mistaken after many years and lesson practice. The second reference is to a voice. Enzo spoke in length about a disembodied voice, taunting him and urging him to find the city of Meshaluis and re-establish the old temples. She shudders, remembering the cold male voice that urged her to sacrifice her colleagues on the altar of Nyarlathotep as soon as she laid her hands upon the book of the Black Earth. I am not restricted to the book. I am still with you. In your heart I shall always remain, until your duty to me is complete. The voice echoes to her. There is still work to be done. The spells need translated, but only the faithful must be allowed to witness the translations. Elazar cannot publish his findings. He must die. His work must continue on in secret. His notes and the computer program must be taken away and hidden from the public. Who are you? She whispers, still trembling. I am he who became before man and knew all there was to know. Professor Daniel Elazar sits in his office, staring at the glowing screen of his desktop computer. Dozens of symbols flash by rapidly in a left-hand column until one symbol is matched in the right-hand column. Once matched, the two identical symbols change color to a bright blue and drop out of the rotation. The computer program runs passages from the Book of the Black Earth and compares them against the key established by Professor Richard Corey from his work on the Ma'asa stone. Surrounding Elazar on the walls are as many awards and commendations. Golden plaques engraved with achievements and framed articles of findings leave barely an empty space to be found. Little do most know that nearly all of his accomplishments were the work of his graduate students. That is the way of the academic world. One day, when they have a teaching position and tenure for themselves, they can do the same thing to their own grad students. Everything balances out, Professor Elazar reassures himself. He has no guilt over taking credit for others' work. He feels it completely justified by his position. If you are working for a technology company and invent something, they own the patent, not you. This is no different. The door to his office slowly cracks open and a slender feminine form enters the room. Her features are delicate despite her intense work in the desert climate dig sites. Her hair is jet black with an almost bluish tint to it. No matter how much she stays in the sun, she does not darken. Her skin remains a faint olive color rather than the caramel brown of her peers and relatives. She is dressed in a white button-up blouse that clings to her thin frame, and a khaki skirt that goes down to her ankles. What can I do for you, Lior? I brought up all the information you requested. Professor Elazar glances at the metal cart behind her. 3 stacks of books and papers lie upon it, organized by date and what they reference. I take it you've already skimmed through these and kept only those most pertinent to our efforts. Lior nods. The sound of the man's voice makes her stomach churn. Even from across the room, his tone of voice nauseates her. I do not believe that any of this aids in translations. All this information does is supplement our findings and corroborate the stories contained in the book as historical fact. Allow me to make the judgments. You just do the monkey work, thank you, he replies, brushing her off. He has gotten to where he is by stealing the hard work and intelligence of others. He is a bottom feeder. He is a parasite. Cut him off. Rip him from this institution and end his plague. Lior shakes in anger. She knows better than to listen to the voice that has tormented her since first touching the Book of the Black Earth in the catacombs beneath the temple of Nyarlathotep. Yet she finds them to ring true. Daniel Elazar is a parasite. He sucks the life out of hard-working students and makes many of them so frustrated that they leave school and the profession altogether. For 2 years she has worked on her dissertation, only to have Elazar swoop in and steal parts of it and promptly publish them in the Archaeological Society newsletter, The Dig. Now she is left to try and scrape together what she can of her ideas without being accused of plagiarizing her own original work. She pulls the cart into the room and closes the door behind her. Professor Elazar's eyes look up in alarm at the sound of the door closing. What are you doing? He demands, standing up. My doors to remain open at all times when a student is present. You know the rules. I cannot have someone accusing me of sexual harassment or favors. I will not allow it. I order you to open that door. Lior untucks her blouse, revealing a slender blade. She wraps her long fingers around the handle and slowly pulls it from its hiding place. A knife? How dare you? You are a parasite, she growls, her face barely resembling her own feminine self. Now 2 dark pits remain of her eyes, full of hatred. Professor Elazar quickly flings a book off his desk, catching Lior just above her right eye and knocking her off her feet. Her back slams onto the floor hard and she gasps to catch her breath. A purple bruise swells from where the book struck her before rupturing and leaking small streams of blood. Professor Elazar runs towards the door, but Lior manages to finally gain her breath and sweep his feet out from beneath him. The older man catches the left side of his face on a bookshelf, toppling it on top of him. The bookshelf collapses with a loud crash, hitting the professor beneath it. Lior stands up, her head throbbing with pain. She looks over at the bookshelf to see a small pool of blood swelling out from beneath it. "What the hell happened?" another professor shouts, running into the room. Lior sobs, holding her bleeding forehead. "The bookshelf came loose and fell onto Professor Elazar," she cries. "One of the books fell off and hit me on the head. There was nothing I could do." The professor strains to lift the debris off his colleague, finding Elazar barely breathing and bleeding profusely from the head. An ambulance is called, and both he and Lior are quickly taken away from the university to the emergency room. City of Arcanus, 9800 BC. Cedrion chants quietly, casting a spell on himself that causes his hair to darken several shades, and his height to decrease until he is below 6 foot tall. Now that he does not stand out nearly as much, he enters an inner walled-in section of the city of Arcanus. In the heart of the city rests the grand temple and residing place of the priest king. 4 guards clad in tightly pulled elephant hide armor block his path with long spears. "Stop," one of the guards says with a gruff voice. "You may relax. I am here bearing a gift." The guards do not move. Cedrion casts a spell to enchant the men, issuing a magical command to stand aside, yet the spell fails to have an effect. Frivocious. I should have known. Cedrion thinks in frustration, having forgotten about the caste of Yazata tasked with protecting individual humans from supernatural forces, much like the concept of a guardian angel. "You can show yourselves. I know you're there," Cedrion growls, drawing his sword. 4 Yazata materialize before him, remaining invisible to the humans. "What are you doing here, Seraphim? And why do you attempt magic on humans?" a ferocious guardian named Taltiel asks. "This task is far beyond you, low one." Cedrion quickly flashes his sword across the ferocious face, splitting his flesh open in a flash of bright light. A second moves in from the side, and Cedrion pivots, cutting him across the throat. The remaining 2 ferocious vanish, using the Yazatan technique of Shukan Ito. Teleportation. Cedrion, now able to enchant the humans, orders them to leave their posts and wander in confusion into the town plaza, so that they may enter the temple unhindered. Inside the temple, Cedrion is disgusted and struggles to keep his anger in check. Vulgar, golden statues of massive coiled serpents and winged reptiles line the chambers before a jewel-adorned throne. An obese man with a long black beard and golden earrings that hang down to the floor sits upon the throne. "Who are you, and how did you gain entry?" "You are Hatushmut, priest king of this city?" Cedrion asks. "I am. And who are you, bold stranger?" "I'm Cedrion, captain of the 8th choir of the Seraphim, under the command of General Raphael." "You, a Yazata? What nonsense is this?" Cedrion ends his spell, reverting to his full radiance. The priest king shields his eyes from the blinding light. "I come with a gift. With this book, you'll achieve great power. The wealth and influence of the city will have no equal," Cedrion says, setting the book of the black earth on the floor. "Use it wisely. Many horrors could arise from improper application," he adds with a smile. Elian struggles to read his own sloppy translations. Dozens of words are circled with question marks hanging over them, indicating his lack of confidence in their meaning. He has decided over several weeks that he should focus on further translating the texts involving Yamura and vessel-ready humans. The amulet said to contain Yamura's essence has been with his family for at least 200 years, and he now knows why the voice has spurred him towards this outcome. It is my family's birthright. It is our destiny to free Yamura. We will become his chosen and rule at his side. Yes, the voice assures. You shall stand with Yamura as his strength sweeps across the world and purifies it. Unjust rulers will be brought down to the subjugated, and all humans will finally have equality. Elian works at the translations almost non-stop, sometimes skipping entire meals or teaching obligations. After 7 months, he believes he has read enough to grasp the concept of what he needs to do. The paper taken from the heirloom archives by Cedrion contains the procedure on performing the spell to locate a vessel-ready human and placing another spirit inside of them. The symbols are complicated, and Elian has come to accept that the spell is far beyond anything he has ever attempted in his youth. His first trial of the spell explodes in his face, burning off his eyebrows and much of his red-orange beard. A second try produces a small light that hovers in the air for a few seconds before dissipating. This requires more discipline. I must practice my meditative training so that I may clear my mind. This spell requires my full concentration. A single distraction creeping into my thoughts will cause disastrous failure. Another 3 months pass, and Elian is finally confident that he can perform the spell successfully. After a good workout and teaching session, his mind and body are free from all distractions. He sits amidst a circle of candles and reads slowly from the ancient paper. Elian's mind fills with hundreds of symbols, each moving and rotating to lock into new shapes and meanings. He focuses on slipping his consciousness outwards from the symbols so they may see them more completely. Mesgar, Amarar, Elian whispers as the first symbols lock and hover into place. Beside them, more symbols continue to rotate and change. Parasintos Pite. A light appears and moves to the doorway as if waiting for Elian to rise from the floor and follow. The light moves down the street, and Elian follows it as best as he can in his car, losing it temporarily several times at stoplights and intersections. He follows the light for over 30 minutes across town until it stops at the front of a small bakery. The interior is dark and the store is closed for the night. Elian sighs and is about to leave when he sees a shadow move from one side of the room to the other on the inside. He creeps to the back of the building and crouches beneath a sign reading, "All deliveries signed," the vendor log before entering. Elian tries the door, but it's locked. Calling up the symbols in his mind, Elian is able to recall the words for the spell that creates fire. "Agnestra," Elian says, burning through the doorknob and pushing the door open easily. Elian enters the small bakery and sees the owner up ahead, counting his safe. The man turns quickly, feeling that he's being watched. Elian moves through the shadows quietly and unseen. In his mind, he repeats over and over again the final words of the spell he must perform. With a single forceful blow, Elian strikes the man across the left side of his face. The baker collapses to the floor, motionless. Elian kneels over the body and places his family's heirloom on his chest. Un sakla bara ma kun lak ult kutula. A black liquid oozes from the amulet and drips onto the man's skin. On contact, his clothing and flesh erupt into flames. Elian backs away in horror as mystical flames engulf the man in mere seconds. The amulet rests upon the charred remains, undamaged. "What have I done?" Elian asks himself, trembling and in tears. "What you have done is necessary. Now destroy the surveillance cameras and burn your fingerprints off of the door." The voice coaches him. Cedrion strides through the chaotic streets of Arcanus, grinning. Flames dance across the buildings lining the street, and the citizens scurry past in screaming horror. Thunderous booms rhythmically echo throughout the city and cause stone foundations to split and trees to topple. 4 shadowed forms tower above the city, smashing their fists into buildings and scooping people up by the dozens to be devoured. "What curses have you brought upon us, Yazata?" Alangar asks in panic, fleeing from his now demolished temple and into the street. "I gave you knowledge. What you did with it is up to you." "You have damned us all!" Alangar cannot contain his rage, shaking uncontrollably. All of Arcanus is now lost! Not yet, but soon. Alangar backs away slowly in fear. What do you mean? You have unleashed the Saint Menu, the Saints. They are powerful, but they will not be the death of your pitiful world. Even now, Anshar is scrambling to assemble the Potestas. With one breath, a Potestas will annihilate this city and everything around it. Not even insects and vermin will be able to survive their wake. All beings fear the Potestas, even us Yazata. They are deployed only for a singular purpose, and that is all they are capable of. You knew this would happen! That was my intention, Cedrion says, using Shunkanido to materialize behind the priest king in a favored finishing move of the Yazata called Olume Neden. Nothing pleases me more than seeing you humans in terror. The Creator has invested so much effort into cultivating you primates that I find great joy in knocking you back down to the dirt where you belong. The Seraphim draws his diamond blade and drives it deep between the man's shoulder blades. The tip of the sword emerges from his chest and Alangar coughs, blood running down his lips. I will see to it personally that every human civilization is crushed one by one. Cedrion pulls his sword free, allowing the man to fall to the street face first. Behind him, the screams of the dying send a thrill through his body.